Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this week's episode of Monsters on the Edge here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones, and today's episode is going to be pre-recorded, so we are not live. If you have questions or comments, and it looks like we're ignoring them in the comments section, we're not in the studio today. We are pre-recorded. With that being said, guys, I want to remind everyone to come on over to patreon.com/Wisconsin Caps. You can check out the whole first series of On the Trail of Undiscovered Beasts. Our first season is all about Bigfoot in Wisconsin. Season 2 should be coming soon. And we also have brand new episodes of our YouTube series will debut there first before you can get them on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, go on and check that out. Coming up also, guys, our team is going to be featured on My Haunted Hometown on TNE. You can head on over to tnenetwork.com and check that out for free. Or go if you're in Canada, you can watch it every Friday night. We are going to be at the Bell City Paracon in November 2nd in Summers, Wisconsin. You can also find us at CryptidCon in Lexington, Kentucky, November 23rd and 24th. We are going to be in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, November 30th at the Psychic and Wellness Fair. And we are going to be in Appleton, Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Convention, May 9th through the 11th. And if you want to come meet me in person, we have a lot of library presentations all through October and the end of the year here all over Wisconsin. You can find all this and more at wisconsincaps.com. Click on the public events tab. If you want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, my guest on today's show is Tyler Bounds. He was raised in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains in northwest Washington, which is also deep in the heart of Bigfootland, which surely has something to do with his fascination with Sasquatch phenomenon from a very young age. He had a sighting of 2 apparent Bigfoots at the age of 4 or 5, and that started him on his lifelong interest in the subject. In 1992, he traveled to Bluff Creek, California on a solo expedition, and that is when his Bigfoot bug really took hold. 15 years later, he went on his first BFRO expedition and soon after became an investigator, researcher, and expedition organizer with the group, organizing and facilitating several Bigfoot expeditions around the country, but with a particular focus on the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and Northern California. A few years later, during an inaugural season of the popular cable television show Finding Bigfoot, he was asked to be a prominent member of the production crew and traveled across the country looking for Bigfoots, camping out, interviewing witnesses, and raising a general ruckus. Late in 2014 was the end of an era with Animal Planet, but also the beginning of a new project. He joined forces with some like-minded folks and joined up with the Pacific North Weird, a Cascadian investigative paranormal comedy art freak show focusing on the weirdness of the Pacific Northwest. You can find that on YouTube. The links are going to be in the show notes for that. And he still spends an obscene amount of time deep in the woods and forests, valleys, coasts, and mountains of the Pacific Northwest, exploring, discovering, and learning more about the mysteries of nature. Joining us on the show now, please welcome Tyler Bounds. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So I have to ask you about Pacific North Weird. And I want to know all about this. It's like it's a freak show art thing. I mean, there's so much going on there.
It is a I was perusing the internet one day and I saw an episode, his first episode, the first episode of Pacific North Weird, and I thought it was funny and hilarious. It was a guy named Vince Inzunza, and I found out that he lived in Olympia, Washington, where I live. I had just moved to Olympia, I don't know, a handful of months before then. And I just reached out to him and said, hey, I have experience with holding cameras and photography and videography. And I know a thing or two about Bigfoots and the Pacific Northwest. If you ever need any help, hit me up. He hit me up, and I have now been helping him, assisting him, partnering with him, making content, and just being silly. Not always silly. We take everything very seriously. He's really into UFOs, aliens, that sort of thing. I'm more Bigfoot and just the inherent weirdness of the Pacific Northwest. So we do stuff like Twin Peaks themed burlesque troops, people trying to talk to the ghost of Ted Bundy, and just anything weird, out of the ordinary. But we both love our subject so much, but we also can laugh at ourselves and everyone else, because it is sometimes very silly. So we do parody music videos. We did one that was Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back, but we did Biggie Got Foot, and it actually was like on Funny or Die at one point in time, and got word from Sir Mix-a-Lot that he had seen the video and really liked it, and just weird. So it's a sketch comedy love letter to all things weird in the Pacific Northwest. We definitely have no shortage of weird characters, historical events. We have Ramtha, we have Space Needle, we got Bigfoot, we have lake monsters and Ogapogos, and so definitely no shortage of material. We haven't been very busy lately because of the pandemic and my partner's some underlying health issues. So he kind of turned into a hermit and didn't want to go out much. And I've made some content on my own. And now he seems content with making TikTok videos from home, because now TikTok is a thing. But we also put on a UFO flying saucer party in a town, Chehalis, Washington, a little south of where I live, and which has now become a pretty large event. This is going to be our 4th year. It's coming up in a couple weeks, September, the second weekend in September. And it's a pretty large event. The whole city has really embraced it. Chehalis is, in 1947, Kenneth Arnold flew out of the Chehalis airport on his way home to, I think it was Boise, Idaho, when he saw the unknown craft flying around Mount Rainier. And and after he landed and reported it, and then that got he described it as like saucers skipping across the water. So that's where the term flying saucers came from. So that's kind of their history, embracing that. Like, because of Chehalis, we have flying saucers, and 1947 was an important year. And so we've really embraced that, ran with it, put on our tinfoil hats, and we have costume contests and bands and speakers, and we've had all sorts of people, people from coast to coast, and fire in the sky guys, and it's in the 4 year, well, it's 4 years. We've only had 3 of them because we had to cancel because of COVID and pandemic and all that stuff, but it's really taking off, no pun intended, and it's a lot of fun, and it's great, and it's coming up in a couple weeks, so that's kind of his baby. I don't have much to do with it besides I walk around, and sometimes I'm in costume, sometimes I'm just holding a camera and documenting things and taking video to make an episode for our YouTube channel. So so that's where that's at. But we have several videos archived online. Archive, is that the right word? On the YouTube. So we're always coming up with new plans and ideas and making new content, but life and worldwide global pandemics have kind of gotten away. So there's that.
Awesome. You kind of touched on some of this. I was going to ask you, when we talk about the Pacific Northwest, everyone thinks Bigfoot, obviously, because there's a lot of Bigfoot activity and a lot of stuff going on out there. So you also have UFO activity, or you have in the past as well. But what else is going on out there?
There's UFO. There was also back in the 40s, and was that 47 as well?
Roswell?
No, before Roswell. We actually did an episode where we went to Roswell. We did an episode called F Roswell, because there's an island out in Puget Sound, Maury Island, where a UFO crashed, exploded, spilt molten metal onto a boat, killed the captain's dog. And so that was that was a documented UFO crash before Roswell. And then army people showed up, military people showed up, got some of these pieces of metal and all that, put them on a plane to take them to somewhere in California. The plane crashed, was never recovered, of course. And then there were mysterious people showing up at the witnesses' homes wearing dark suits in a dark colored automobile and all that sort of thing. And that was the first recognized appearance of the Men in Black. So we had, the first the first UFO crash, the first Men in Black, the term flying saucers, the first Bigfoot hoaxers, Rant Mullins and Ray Wallace. And, it's a lot of folklore around here, and things that have gone to become, really entrenched in the public's mind and kind of pop culture, originated here in Washington. So, but we have weird offbeat TV shows. Twin Peaks was filmed here. Harry and the Hendersons was filmed here. We have Ramtha, weird psychic cult leader from Neptune or Atlantis or whatever it is. We just, we get Ted Bundy and Green River killers and killer. And, it's just one of those things that, it's dark and can be dark and creepy and foreboding here. There's sometimes you go in the woods and it's misty and foggy and mossy and drippy, and it's like hell yeah, there's monsters here. This is exactly where scary stuff lives. And, whether that's Sasquatch, Bat Squatch, serial killer, cult, whatever, I've gone through the woods and came up on, totally off trail and come up on a clearing of like circle made of rocks that somebody packed a ton of rocks way up from wherever, and like some circle to, I don't know, cast spells or curses, or I have no idea. But it's like, okay, of course, it's like you just kind of look at it and like, that's Washington, there's weird stuff going on, and I'm glad to be a part of that weirdness and documenting and doing my part to understand, and I guess in some ways adding to the weirdness and the mystery of this corner of the continent, country, wherever we are. Yeah.
Very good. Very interesting. I mean, I've known about Roswell and some of the stuff, but I didn't know like all the UFO history that you guys had out in Washington. That's really neat. I appreciate that.
There was our governor. There was a official memorandum, legislative something that where we declared that, hereby and forthwith, we had the first UFO crash and flying saucers. And so there's this whole thing like the Maury Island incident is, historical. I can't remember the exact thing, but we printed up several copies of it, flew down to New Mexico, or actually flew down to Arizona, and then drove to New Mexico with a bunch of copies of this official decree from Washington, and like put it on the front doors of City Hall in Roswell, left them, on the cork board in the lobby of the spaceship shaped McDonald's in Roswell, went to the International UFO Museum and left our propaganda all of just left a paper trail all over Roswell as much as we could, so that people would see these like, what the hell, who Pacific North weird, so yeah. And then we filmed all that for an episode. Like, we were first. Who cares about Roswell? We had a UFO. We had the Men in Black. We have flying saucers. What do you got? Roswell? You mean weather balloon? Yeah, no. You have a weather balloon. We have UFOs, and we have Bigfoot, and we have volcanoes. So, suck it, Roswell. So that was, so that was kind of the gist of that. Having good-hearted fun, but also, whatever. We were first. So F Roswell was the name of the episode, but not so kid friendly.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like fun.
It was amazing. It was hilarious. It's one of the most incredible things ever. So yeah, cool.
Wow. So
What are you gonna do?
we've been talking a lot about UFOs and stuff, and that's awesome. Like I said, it's really cool to hear that, because like I said, I'm into everything. Our team goes out and does all kinds of research on all kinds of stuff, but we're mostly focused around here because that's what we research. So expanding out into different areas and learning is always fascinating and stuff. But
Yeah.
Let's jump back to Bigfoot here. So I know that you've been on some other shows and some other podcasts and talked about some of that stuff, but I haven't heard on anything. You talk about in the bio that your first encounter was at like 4 or 5 years old, and I actually haven't heard that story. So you want to start there and kind of tell a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, sure. So where do I? So my father's parents have a big ranch in southern Oregon, Ashland, Oregon, like a big 5,000 acre ranch. And my grandfather was a hunter, gunsmith, outdoorsman. He's got a 5,000 acre ranch. He's the kind of guy that has like old Jeep Willys that he's stripped down that he uses to drive around his ranch to go like 100% herd cattle and rope horses. And I mean, like real working ranch sort of stuff. Back in the 30s, 40s, they had kind of like a resort there. He built a lake in his front yard with a bulldozer, and people could come out there, stay, go on trail rides on motorbikes, little trail bikes, go on horse rides, paddle boats, water skiing, hunting, adventure sort of stuff on this ranch. Really kind of a unique place to go when I was a little kid. Lots of adventure always going on. And my grandfather was a very much he was a self-made man. He made guns, sold guns, custom firearms and knives and that sort of thing. But he was also very much a get rich quick kind of guy. Always had some scheme, some invention. He did have a couple patents for like barbed wire fencing tighteners and stuff like that. His brother was also an inventor. His brother, see if I get this right, I'm pretty sure it was his brother, but like those L-shaped metal things on logging trucks that hold all the logs on backs of trucks. Like my grandfather's brother invented those. So I think my grandfather is always like, I want to make it an invention too that's going to change the world. But he was always looking, buying land, selling land, looking to make, instant millionaire sort of thing. Also, my grandfather, he was very outdoorsy, raised my dad and his family. They were all very outdoorsy, horse people, proficient with guns and shooting and hunting and, and bushcraft type stuff. And my grandfather was a Boy Scout leader. He was my dad's Boy Scout leader. My dad was my Boy Scout leader. It was a very much like, I was a Boy Scout. You're going to be a Boy Scout. You are going to be a Boy Scout. You're going to stick with it until you're an Eagle Scout because I did. So you have to. And, so even when I wanted to quit Cubs Boy Scouts when I was younger, my dad, like very heartfelt and very firmly said, no, you are going to be an Eagle Scout. Oh, it's me. So I begrudgingly like, okay, fine. And, and became an Eagle Scout, which I'm very proud of. Anyways, so we went from Washington to Southern Oregon for a family reunion and got there. And my grandfather had pretty much double booked himself, like on some Boy Scout trip, an overnighter or something, or a hike to somewhere. I don't really remember. And nobody remembered. I just recently found out like 2 years ago where all this actually took place because nobody could remember and everybody that knew had passed on. So it was always very much a mystery. But I, for whatever reason, I tagged along, or my grandfather wanted to bring me along or something. So I'm very young. I know I was younger than 6, and I was probably 5. I don't know. 4 seems kind of young for me to be going into the woods, but also that's what we did. So it's not like, Is he going to be okay? Of course I'm going to be okay. I'm with my grandfather. He probably has like 9 guns on him and 10 knives and a tomahawk and a samurai sword and whatever. So still to this day, I have no idea how old I was, but I was pretty young, 4 or 5, somewhere in there. And so we were walking along, and I remember it really distinctly, of walking along and my grandfather like stopping everybody, and because we're walking single file down this trail and stopping, and I'm behind all these Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, whatever they were. I just know, I mean, they were probably like 10 years old, but to me, they're like, huge, people, like grown-up people. And I remember like trying to look around these scouts and seeing a thing cross the trail in front of us, going from right to left. And a big thing just walked across the trail 50 to 100 feet in front of us, maybe somewhere in there. I was young, but I remember the scene so vividly. And across the trail, and then like a second later, another one crossed the trail, but it was smaller. And and it crossed the trail, and I remember the one of the things that I remember the most is as it was going across the trail, as it was going into the woods on the other side of the trail, it kind of stopped and just for a second, like looked at us, just kind of gave the side eye, and then went to the woods, like it was checking us out, And I remember that there's a lot that happens in the fog of time. I mean, I'm 53 years old, so this was 49 years ago. But I've thought about that encounter a lot because it was a life-changing event for me. And just that split second of recognition, like, I don't want to say it was a baby, but it was a younger Bigfoot. And I think it was like, young humans, like curious. And, anywhere else be like, we'd be hanging out on the playground or, but, and then it was gone, and there was a big flurry of activity. I remember my grandfather yelling at someone to go back to the Land Cruisers. We had driven 2 old Toyota Land Cruisers down there. And somebody ran back to the vehicles. So we must have not have been too far down the trail, but I remember people running off, coming back, and then pouring plaster of Paris into these holes in the ground, and don't remember anything else about that trip. I don't remember if we kept on going where we were going, or what, but I remember going back to the ranch, and I remember I was carrying one of these plaster casts and going up to this outbuilding on the ranch, and my grandfather, he had one and I had one, and he put his up against the building and put mine up against the building in line with the 12 or 15 other footprint casts that he already had there. So, and that was the first time had seen those. And I remember looking at them like, wow, cool, but I have no idea. I have no idea what Bigfoot is, that there's no such thing as Bigfoot. Very soon after that, when this was all done, I'm back home, I'm doing my thing, and my mom would tell me that when I was watching TV, I was and still am a huge dinosaur nerd. I mean, I went to school for paleontology and dinosaur nerd my entire life. I still read paleontological journals and keep up on dinosaur things. But when I was a little kid, my favorite show in the universe was Land of the Lost. And, I was just mystified by that show because there's dinosaurs and there's slee stacks, whatever. But there's the little caveman guy, Chaka, and my mom told me that when I would watch that show, whenever Chaka came on the screen, I would say, "That's what I saw with Grandpa. That's what I saw with Grandpa. Saw the little hairy caveman kid." And and my parents knew what happened down in California, in Northern California. Did I mention that we had driven from Southern Oregon to Northern California to a place called Blue Lake, which I just found out a couple years ago. I asked my dad for years and years and years where that happened. He's like, I have no idea. And like 3 years ago, he just blurted out, like, stream of consciousness, having a conversation about that. It's like, yeah, that was that time when you went with Grandpa down to Blue Lake, down to the scout camp at Blue. I'm like, what? Dude, I've been asking you for 40 years where this happened. Now you just, I'm like, I've been there, and there's Bigfoot, and there's a Bigfoot statue in that town. And, so, finally cleared up that mystery. And he's like, yeah, I forgot that I knew it. And I'm like, I've been telling this story and telling people, and like, I have no idea where it was. Nobody knows where it was. Then my dad just like nonchalantly, here, just does this thing. So yeah. So yeah, my mom said that I would always talk about, that's what I saw with Grandpa. Not too long after that, there's another TV show on that I became obsessed with as a 6 or 7 year old kid, was $6 Million Man. And at one point in time, he teamed up with Bigfoot, and they fought crime and captured criminals and threw styrofoam boulders at bad guys and whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Bigfoot. And so I had been, so that was my introduction to the whole thing. Seeing the footprints, seeing more of the footprints. And then, we would go down there probably once a year to see Grandma and Grandpa and family things. It's like a 500-mile drive. It's not, Northern Washington to Southern Oregon. Did that drive a lot. And after that, I'd always go look at those footprint casts. I was just mystified. Like, what are these? And I'm pretty sure I had conversations with my grandfather about them. I don't remember any of those conversations. Don't remember what he told me. Because I was a little kid and my brain wasn't fully formed, and well, probably still isn't. But that's what really got me interested. And I think, looking back, because my grandfather passed away not long after that. I think I was 11. And And when we went back to Oregon to go get, my dad wanted some of his things and getting belongings and keepsakes and mementos. And I'm like, all I want are those footprint casts. I want those casts. I want to find out what they are, where they came from, and got down there and they were gone, disappeared. In fact, there were like little pieces of plaster. I don't know if it's stuff like had fallen off the cast just being out in the weather for years, or somebody came and smashed them. I have no idea. But my best guess is in the late 60s, when all that activity was happening in Northern California, I can imagine my grandfather going out there in one of those stripped down Willys Jeeps, with no windshield, no top, and with high powered rifle. And he's going to shoot himself a Bigfoot and make $1 million, And so I can totally picture him down there with, Titmus and DeHinden and all those guys in the late, mid to late 60s, going down there and just cruising roads. He probably hung out with those guys. I mean, I have no idea. But when all that activity was happening and then a film came out, I mean, he was probably right in the midst of that and either cast his own prints or got copies of other prints that Titmus or Patterson or whoever. And I'm really, it's a huge loss that those aren't in existence anymore. In fact, Cliff tells me all the time that, like, every time you tell me that story, it breaks my heart because, dude, if we had, a dozen or more other footprints from that area at that time, then, we could match those up. If we knew where they came from, match them up, the dimensions and the, and like, oh, this is the Onion Mountain or Patty or, whatever. It's a big loss for the, for the data set. But yeah, that's that really got me interested. And then, I'm checking out books at the library, any Bigfoot book, going through the card catalog and the microfiche and ordering other books, from other libraries so I can read every single Bigfoot book that there is. And also growing up where I grew up here in Pacific Northwest, there's Bigfoot Lock and Key and Bigfoot. I mean, there's Bigfoot books and there's Bigfoot music and, there's chainsaw carvings of Bigfoot, and this is in the 70s. I mean, they're a lot more prevalent now, but, in the 70s, I remember seeing like chainsaw sculptures of Bigfoots in little towns out in the middle of nowhere and hearing stories from loggers about, things that go bump in the night. And guys, I would just overhear things and be fascinated with, like, this is Bigfoot and this happens here. Like I read a book and, the screams recorded in Puyallup. And I'm like, I know where Puyallup is, and screams recorded, and Copalis, and, just all these kind of famous incidents. And like, I know where that is. I've been there. I don't live far from there. I live where Bigfoot lives, and, really sucked me in. And just, kind of collateral damage, going to the library to check out Bigfoot books. And I've already read all the Bigfoot books, but then there's, what's this Loch Ness Monster? What is that? And, whoa, Loch Ness Monster might be a dinosaur. And then once again, dinosaur nerd, I'm like, there's a living dinosaur in Loch Ness, and Michaela, dude, living dinosaurs somewhere. I'm in, you know, and any monster, you know, I've always been fascinated with monster movies, Godzilla movies, any space alien, Japanese, you know, B movie stuff, and anything that is all that stuff that might be real, you know, Mothman and Jersey Devil. I mean, I had already ran out of Bigfoot books, so I might as well read all these other weird things. And then you get into UFOs and Charles Fort and all the weird, you know, Chariot of the Gods, you know, just going down that rabbit hole. It's not even a rabbit hole. It's like a huge gaping black hole that sucks you in. So I've always been really fascinated with all that and pretty well versed in it. But, you know, it's interesting to me, but there's nothing I can do to add any knowledge to what's going on at Loch Ness. You know, I can read from my couch on the other side of the planet. Can't do anything about Mothman. You know, can't really. I mean, I could contribute, but not as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old kid. But Bigfoot lives in my like literal backyard, and I can go to the woods where I love, you know, another thing that my father and my grandfather and scouting instilled in me is just I love being out in nature and woods and trees and animals, and just endlessly just fascinating. So always, even if I didn't know it at the time, but I always had like that third eye, you know, I'm just going on a day hike with, you know, friends. But I'm always like, there might be a Bigfoot in these woods, and, you know, and always listening. So even when I was a little kid, always kind of like, you know, there could be, there's a Bigfoot here, you know, being Bigfoot expert, you know, at 12 years old and telling everybody, you know, I read a thing about, and, you know, I just read this book by this guy, John Green. And so I really felt like Bigfoot was my thing. Was really interested in it, interested in everything else. But, you know, if there's a UFO sighting, more often you can't like rush to the scene of UFO sighting and be like, oh yeah, it looks like, yeah, that patch of stars looks like it might have had a UFO in it, you know, 2 days ago. You know, unless there's a landing or some documentation. Otherwise it's, you know, planet Venus, swamp gas, you know, weather balloons. And the same thing with Bigfoot. You know, there's, you know, I've interviewed lots of people and seen lots of photos of footprints. Like, you know, I'm sorry, you know, that's a bear. No, it's not. I'm like, well, no, it is. It is, because I know a little bit about both, and, you know, and that is a recording of an owl. And, you know, so just having that knowledge of the woods and experience of the woods is what really kind of, when I went to my first BFRO expedition, and, you know, there was a lot of people that I guess recognize that, well, this guy kind of knows his way around out in the woods and the forests and local flora and fauna, and isn't afraid to go walking around out in the dark, and, you know, has a lightweight backpacking tent and is ready to go way the heck out there, and, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, away from the campgrounds and the people and the expedition. Like, no, dude, I want to go deeper. I want to go, you know, sure, there might be Bigfoots here, but there's definitely Bigfoots way the hell back there. And so I think it's a weird a weird confluence of a lot of interests and experiences and skills that and history that got me where I ended up in Bigfootery, which is a weird thing. Always a weird thing to talk about. But yeah, happened. Weird. Anyways, there's my story. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah. So when did you talk about the Patterson Gimlin and your possible grandfather maybe going down there and stuff with those guys? When did this happen, do you think, in timeline with that? Was this like right after the film came out, or like how long after did you have that encounter then?
Oh, I mean, Patterson Gimlin was 1967. So I'm thinking that it was probably 1975, 74 or some. I was born in 71. So probably 75. So that's only what, 8 years after Patterson Gimlin. But there was a lot of stuff going on before that too, 64, 65, before Patterson Gimlin, when Ray Wallace was down there and started punching the go road through the mountains and opened all that previously untouched and unattainable territory to people in cars, logging trucks, and bulldozers. So yeah, I mean, 8 years before, 10 years before my grandfather could have been down there. I wish I knew. My grandmother told me a little bit when I remember asking her about the footprints, and she didn't know where they came from or where they went. And even when I was working on finding Bigfoot, and she said to me, like, "You're chasing that old guy. Your grandfather used to chase that old guy." She was in her 90s or whatever at that point. I'm like, "Yeah, where did he chase him, Grandma?" "Oh, he chased that old guy all over the place." And that old guy, he's still out there, because in her mind, there's only one Bigfoot in the world. So timeline, I mean, yeah, mid to late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure when, but I mean, I would imagine that as news got out about footprints being found, the actual word Bigfoot being in the nomenclature, and when that movie came out, my grandpa, once again, kind of a fortuitous confluence of skills and events. Like, he's got a basement full of guns, like seriously 200 guns in his basement, and has shot bears and buffalo and elk. I mean, like, hunted every animal. He's got 4-wheel drive vehicles. He's got horses. He's got backcountry horsemanship skill. Like, he could have been, like the same thing as Gimlin and Patterson, going down there, riding horses around, waiting to spook something up and, and then kill it. I'm 100% that's what he was thinking. He was going to make $1 million and be famous for the rest of his life. And because he was always, he had his big ranch. He was always kind of a showman and kind of Walt Disney-ish, like, here's my resort, and I want a lake. So there's a river that goes through right here, and I'm going to dig all this out, and now I'm going to have a lake. And he did, and it's still there. It's called Bounds Reservoir now, and like, big thing on the map. Like, that's so weird. He just decided, I'm getting a bulldozer, I'm making a lake. Boom. I'm going to go to the woods, I'm going to shoot a Bigfoot. Boom. That's just kind of his can do, make it happen attitude that he had, you know? So, yeah, late 60s, early 70s, you know, I've always thought that when we went on that Boy Scout hike, on that scout hike, there's probably a reason we were going there. There's probably a reason why we went to California and not somewhere in Oregon, Medford, Oregon, or Ashland, or someplace closer, because he was probably a sighting near there, you know, at some point in time, or a report, or, you know, something like that, that he is going to use, you know, under the guise of a scouting trip, going to go check out Bigfoot, you know, see if there's a Bigfoot that he can harvest. So I totally would not be surprised if that had been the case. So yeah. Weird.
I would tend to agree based on what you said, that that he probably had ulterior motives for that trip.
Yeah, there is definitely a reason why we were there at that spot. And, you know, there is, like I said, conveniently, there's a Boy Scout camp there, in those hills, or mountains, Northern California. But, yeah, probably a very specific reason why we were there. Did I say Blue Lake? I don't think it's Blue Lake. I said the wrong thing. I don't remember where it is, but I don't remember the name of the town. But somewhere out there in the middle, freaking nowhere. I don't remember now. Whatever it is.
Lost again to the annals of time there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, someone will hear this and be like, "That's not Blue Lake. That's," you know, and so, and I do know that there's because when I was down there, went and filmed a thing down at the Patterson-Gimlin site, and I remember being in that town. God, it's something Lake or Grove but and there's a big Bigfoot statue right in the middle of town, and looking at a map and looking at a trail map, and went up to a place, and there's right above town, there's a hill called Monkey Ridge, and like, oh, yeah, see? So once again, it's like, yeah, that's why we were there. That's why my grandfather took us there, 100%, you know. History of sightings, probably a recent sighting, and he's going to get on it. So yeah.
Hey guys, so the interview with Tyler Bounds ran a little long, so we're actually going to be splitting this into 2 pre-recorded episodes. So come back next week and we're going to finish up as Tyler gets into more of his experiences and stories from behind the scenes of finding Bigfoot. It's an amazing interview and you won't want to miss it next week. So guys, hang tight, come on back, and until next time, I'll see you on the edge.